Hello witchy people, it's really early in the morning and I couldn't sleep. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning and I couldn't sleep, so here I am looking very much my age, no makeup, hair not even brushed, and I thought, no, I can't sleep. I've got things on my mind that I'm not too sure what they are, but it was like, oh, I've got things in my mind, let's go talk. And no one's awake, so I'm talking to you, and this would have gone live, but I actually do this quite a lot. This is going to sound really strange. Quite often I will, if I can't sleep, I'll make a video, but it doesn't always end up, I don't think they've ever ended up on the channel, because, you know, and this may not, but we shall see. So I think one of the things that's been on my mind lately was that there's been a lot of talk and vlogs and opinions given about hexing and negative magics, which I thought was quite interesting, because negative magic isn't necessarily bad magic. I hate that. Talking about things, nothing is ever black or white, really, is it? And if you think negative magic, binding is a negative magic. But I've listened to a few people and I find it quite strange that there are some people who will absolutely say no to hexing. You must never hex someone, but will quite happily do love spells or money spells. And to me that's because there is always a balance in the universe. You have to have a balance. So if you are doing a love spell that's in the traditional sense a love spell where you are trying to make someone love you, you are forcing them. Barkley! It's the dog snorting. Yes, if you're forcing someone, have you finished? That's a no. Shh. Come here then. Shh. 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 So if you're forcing someone to try and fall in love with you and you're trying to manipulate them, then that's not keeping a good balance. If you're doing money spells where you just expect to get money rather than earn it or deserve it, then you have to think about balance that way as well. What are you taking from someone else? It's all about balance. So I don't understand people that won't hex but do quite strong spells on to do with love and money. But I have this view about hexing, and I know it's not a popular view. I don't mind it. I wouldn't, it's not something I take lightly. It's not something that I do very often, but it's not something that I would say, oh, I could never do that, because I'd be lying. I think hexing, once again, it's about balance. Until you know what some may consider the darker side of magic, how can you know the lighter side? But to me, it is about balance. You can't have all... yes, there are light workers, and I think that's amazing. To be a light worker must be incredibly fulfilling for a lot of people, but I couldn't do it because I can't have all one thing. Because once again, I think about balance. If someone is a light worker, then there must be someone else out there who just uses negativity, just uses you know, hexing all the time or something. Maybe that's it. Or maybe you have to have all these light workers to counterbalance people like me that occasionally do a bit of hexing. I just throw it out there. But like I said, it's not something that's done lightly. What, Barclay? You stink. So, you want to look at... You can't see anyone on there. There's no one there. It's just you and me. See, look. There. Can you see the screen now? Happy now? Yes. Yes. Okay. So, it is very much to do with balance, and to understand or to fully appreciate the light, you have to understand the darkness. And I think that's, for me, that's a good way for me to look at it. I can understand why people don't like hexing, and I think the problem with hexing is, any spell work is, you are manipulating energy, but some of that energy comes from you. So you are giving of yourself when you are doing spell work. It's almost like it's taking part of your spirit, because it's part of your energy. And it's sometimes, if you kind of get used to the way a certain person does the spell, there's almost like a signature to it, and almost like a feel to it, like, I don't know, their own personal, like a fingerprint. It's almost like a fingerprint. It's their own personal way of doing things. You can almost sense the person who is doing the spell work. So if you hex somebody, then they may get a sense of who you are, which is something to be careful of. The other thing is, obviously, I mean, I'm very good at, I think if you've ever done any hexing, you have to be very, very good at return spells, you know, return to sender. And rather than return to sender, I like to try to dissipate the spell. So, not in the fact that return to sender and do to the sender what you would have done to me. That's not a good idea, personally, I think. Because you can end up playing to and fro, bat and ball, with hexing spells between a couple of people. So what I prefer to do is sort of like go on your merry way, return, go back to where you came from, and basically use up all your energy in returning, so you have no power. And so it's a simplified sort of way of explaining it, but that's basically it. But is there a moral ground somewhere there where really you shouldn't hex? This is something that, do you want to get down now? This is something that I've also heard talked about. And as I said, I don't think, for me anyway, hexing isn't something to be taken lightly. So you don't go around cursing people and hexing people willy-nilly and pointing the finger and saying a few words and, you know, trying to get people into trouble. It would seriously have to be something incredibly, just serious, damaging to someone for me to want to hex someone or something. I mean, I would never hex, you know, our Prime Minister or the Queen or anything like that, you know. People I don't know. I think to make a good hex, there has to be a personal connection.
And once again, this is where it becomes quite dangerous, that the other person can kind of pick up on who you are when you do send out a hex or a curse. So you really have to, not to get a dog that keeps on disturbing you. You really do have to be careful. Barclay, you've made me lose my train of thought. But yes, where was I? I'll get there. So part of hexing is protecting yourself, but more than just protecting yourself is being prepared for the comeback. Because there might be a comeback. 9 times out of 10 there's going to be a comeback. It's something, like I said, not only that you have to consider, but you have to prepare for. So ethically, morally, is it okay to hex? I think that depends on your own personal view. For me, yes it is, but it would have to be something darn serious for me to, first of all, put myself in a position of openness and retaliation, and to use up my energy for something. It would have to be something pretty serious and personal. Like I did explain, that you have to have a personal connection somewhere. I'm sure there are many people who believe that you can hex all over the world and send hexes all over the world. You don't have to have any connection to anyone, and it just works. For me, that it doesn't work. I think spell work always is better when you have a personal connection. And think of it like the whole 6 degrees of separation. You know, no matter what, there's a 6 degree of separation. You have to have a connection somewhere along the line. Almost like a map for the energy, the spell work to reach its destination. And as much as that can be done just through visualization and the manipulation of the energy, I think it's much easier to visualize and use that manipulation of energy if you have some idea of where it's going, who you and the connections it's going to use to get there. I'm not very good at explaining things, but I do try. So I am not against hexing. I am against hexing for the sake of it. I think that it's not on. But the reason I'm not against hexing is because, well, like I said, because of balance. I think the whole universe needs balance, and like I said, to appreciate one thing, you need to understand its opposite and have an appreciation of both sides to really understand either and to have an appreciation of either. So, a question I have been asked a couple of times, not often, but a couple of times, is what is hexing? What is cursing? Now, you could say that it is a negative spell, a bad spell, black magic. I suppose really it's the intent and the feeling that you have when you're putting it out there, and that's something else that you have to be careful with hexing. You cannot hex if you're angry, and I know that sounds really strange because usually a hex or a curse is done out of anger and frustration. But if you're having those feelings, then it's much harder to successfully complete
any spell work, because you have to be calm and collected to focus properly and use the manipulation properly, to focus on your intent and the actual spell itself. If you're angry, then a lot of your energy is and your intent is focused inward. It's focused upon that anger. And whereas that can be very powerful, there's no doubt about that, it can be very powerful, it's not easily manipulated. It's very easily let out of control and things can go awry. So I think that's definitely one thing to bear in mind as well. So yes, it is about sending out an intent, not necessarily to do harm. Hexing isn't necessarily to do harm. A lot of people seem to think that hexing is this terrible thing that you do where you want to cause harm. It isn't. It's more of a cease and desist and here's a kick up the backside. Kind of like a binding spell with a bit of a sting. I think it's best to... yes, there are more powerful hexings that you can do, and hexes that you can do. But unless you're incredibly gifted, wise or learned, it's not something I would suggest. I find it... I don't like negativity. I don't like doing bad things. I don't like hexing people. But sometimes I do feel within my practice it is necessary. Because, like I said, you do have... the way you do a spell, the person who receives that spell has your signature, your energy, they kind of might get to know where it's coming from, and they can always return it. Like I said, there's no point ever returning a spell to sender and to do to that person what they intended to do to you. It's a waste of time. For a start, that spell in its path back and forwards is losing energy all the time, so it's never going to be as powerful. But secondly, what's the point? It's much easier to say on your way back, just dissipates. You will just grow weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker, and your energy is going to deplete and change into something else. And you have to have quite a strong imagination to be able to focus. To me, spell work is a lot about imagination. It's not just the focus and the manipulation of energy. It is to be able to imagine, to visualise. But no, it's not something I would recommend for everyone. A lot of people wouldn't feel comfortable anyway, hexing. I think if it's right for you, then it is, it's okay to do. But be aware of what you're doing. Never do it in anger. Never do it out of frustration. No matter how much you want to. Because things can go wrong. And I'm not very much up on the rule of three. Whatever you send out comes back threefold. The threefold law, I think it is. But I do believe that, once again, it's about that whole the 6 degrees of separation. Everything is connected. And everything you do causes ripples and effect. There's a cause and effect that carries on. So, and eventually, that cause and effect is going to hit the shores and come back to you. Those ripples are going to hit the shore and come right the way back. And they may not be as strong, but you don't know. You could send out a little wave and end up with a tsunami coming back at you. I think you have to be very aware that even if you're not, you don't follow a path or a practice where you have a rule of three, you have to understand that there are connections in the universe and there is balance in the universe. There's give and take. So when you hex, don't do it. Like I said, I couldn't be one of these people that only does good magic. It's just not going to happen for me. I have to have a balance, and that's not to say that if I do a good spell I have to do a bad spell. It's not like that. But I have to understand what I'm taking and what I'm giving, and to make sure that that path stays open both ways. I'm not shutting up. I'm not going to shut off one path. I need a two-way street here. Anyway, I've rambled on enough. This is me at 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's actually now 25 to 4 in the morning, not being able to sleep with a cold coffee and a snorting dog. So there you go. Just a few thoughts on hexing and why you should do it, why you shouldn't do it. But like I said, once again, it's up to the individual. So many people don't agree with it, or they're not comfortable with it, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but there's nothing wrong either with those of us who feel a little bit of hexing is okay in the right circumstances. That's all for now. Thank you for watching, witchy people. I'm going to see if I can go back to bed and go to sleep now. Bye for now.